So I have done this part of puddle painting in the classroom. Now I'm going to continue with the process. So I have removed the wax that I used to hold my form, my shapes, and now I'm going to retape it, trying to line up my white marks really well. And the colors that I'm using are the Pierrot Red, Hansa Yellow, New Gamboge, and Pernon Orange. So for the background, I've used mostly the red and a little bit of the yellow because I want a vibrant green. So I'm going to use the two primary colors that are closest together on the color wheel, because this is going to be analogous from red to yellow painting. So it'll mostly be an orange tone painting. So I'm allowed to use my tube orange as well. So I have two tube oranges, Permanent Orange and Pernon Orange, and I'm using the one that skews a little bit more to the red side. And we're going to do kind of a mosaic type of painting where we're going to try not to paint the whites lines to give it sort of a graphical quality. I'm using a painting as a reference that I previously did using another method, and I traced the design for the most part up from my previous painting. So what I want to do now is I want to erase the pencil marks because they're just a little bit too dark. I should be able to see them. Once I paint over them though, it's very difficult to get them off. So I just want to knock back their intensity a little bit. So essentially I want to create a mosaic feel, and hopefully I've been able to remove that wax efficiently. Not saying I can remove the pencil, so I think I used a little bit harder lead pencil for my planning. All right, so now I'm going to use the same three colors, and I want to make these stand out more. So these are my most prominent, the lightest color. So I want to first puddle. Let me first try to clean up my edges a little bit. So I'm going to take some of the red, and I'm just going to go see if I can paint over this part that was previously waxed. Looks like I can. So I just want to clean up my edges a little bit. We used the wax in the classroom because it was more efficient. I didn't have to wait for that to dry, the masking fluid to dry. But it did leave for pretty chunky edges to my shape. So I'm just going to clean up those edges a little bit here before I start in. So I will probably see, because that dried hard and this is staining pigment, it'll probably show, but I'm going to try to mask it as best as I can. I'm just cleaning up my edges with a combination of the orange and the red. And I'm going to try to paint around my shapes and not use the masking, but that's another option. I don't want the end of my petals to be too pointy. I want to clean up these shapes, so it was important for me to remove the wax first because these edges just weren't very clean. Kind of way overshot that. It's hard to see when you do the waxing, so I'm using a combination. I'm just going in, I'm not puddling it. Going in with strong pigment. I'm just painting right up to the edge. I'm using a combination of my orange, Pernon Orange, and my red, just to try to mask where I left off with the last one. Cleaning up my edges. So when I do this in the future, I probably don't want to use the wax because to me it makes it too chunky of a line, and I want more specific lines. So because I had a mistake there, I'm going to change my form a little bit. I'm the artist, I can change it if I want to. So that's, just want to make these look like petals, echinacea petals. So I'm using a combination of the orange color and the red color. I'm just cleaning up my edges a little bit based on this image here. That's a little more orange up there, so I'll go more orange up there. I don't want it to be obvious that I've made those mistakes initially. And I'm trying to stay out of the way of the camera. I have a few more restrictions than you, but it was critical that I remove the wax ahead of time. And I'm just going to use some red and blend that back. I don't want to lose the sense of that swirly nature. And then I'm probably going to blow dry it so it dries off. I think the wax is still adhered there. Oh, there it goes. Sometimes I can scrub it a little bit, kind of remove that hard edge that was there before. A little bit of wax there. So this is a background flower. I want to find the difference between those. The foreground flower and the background flower. Oops, overshot that a little bit. So I'll cut in a little bit more there. And I don't want it to appear like it has a line where I stopped off before. Okay, so I want to do this back in here, and I'm just gonna create the puddle with clean water. So get my brush really clean. I'm gonna create the puddle with clean water, but I don't want to go all the way to the edge. I'm gonna leave a white dry border. And I'm going to create first my water path for this whole flower. So I'm going to go not all the way to the edge. I'm going to leave a white edged border around this shape. So I'm using the blocking method or painting around to determine my saving of the white. So I can't let my water go all the way to the edge, and I want it really puddly so that it stands up in a puddle. And I'm just going to do this flower back here for now. I'm going to do one flower at a time. I'm leaving a white edge to create a dry border. And if I look sideways, I can see where the water is. Okay, now I'm going to get my yellow color. Pretty strong, and I'm going to touch the surface of the puddle and swirl the paint. I'm going to try really hard not to even touch the paper. I'm going to let the water path carry the water around, but I want to leave a little white edge. See if I can do it with blocking and not using my masking fluid. Now I don't want it to be pure yellow, so I'm going to swirl in some weak orange tones in there as well and let that swirl around. I'm trying really hard not to touch the paper or go across the white edge. But I want these forward flowers, at least at the beginning, to be quite a bit lighter than the background. Okay, so that's a puddle. Now I'm going to get my clean water again, and I want to leave a white edge between all my shapes, so it's more of a graphic quality to it. I can go quite right up to the edge of my pencil line there because I have that white edge. Okay, then I'm going to come over here and leave a white edge, dry edge there. And a white edge there. I don't want to get too big of a shape because the water will dry out before I get to the right puddle time. Now you can mask these whites. I'm just going to do a thin bit of water for this stem as it comes down. Okay, and then looking at my painting sideways, I can see I missed water over there. I'm going to do the same thing. This time I'll puddle it yellow again. Let the water kind of swim around in there, or the paint, excuse me, swim around in that puddle, trying not to actually touch the paper. Take a little bit of my orange, so I create the swirl effect. And on this side I want them to be a little different color, so I'm going to start with the orange. And then put in yellow, so it'll be more orange yellow rather than yellow orange. Leaving a little white edge between the flower and the background. I'm not going to worry about bad bumps and stuff. I can clean that up later. So now I'm going to start with the orange. Fairly weak. I'm going to puddle in the orange color. Not poking down into the paper, kind of skimming the surface of the paper and letting the paint swirl. It's too close to the background color, so I want to put significant amount of yellow in there as well, but this one will be more orangey green or orangey yellow rather than yellow orange. Clean up that shape on this side of the white line. Trying to just paint in the puddle, not actually touching the paper. This one I'm going to do last. I do want to fix that, see if I can lift that up a little bit. I encroached a little too much. Oh, it looks like it's a staining color, so I'll go ahead and puddle a little colored water so you can see it. I'll have to get that back with magic eraser. I'm going to leave a little white edge there. So if I was as careful as my friend Mary Pusey, who painted the rose mosaic, I would take more time and be more deliberate. But I don't like really long videos. So over here, again, I'm going to start with the orange, which is kind of a red orange. I'm going to puddle that in. And then on top of that, I'm going to put in my new gamboge. And in the end, we should have an analogous painting of echinacea flowers on hot press paper using a puddle painting technique. So you can puddle with really weak pigment too. So I'll start with that. As long as you create that puddle so you can get the swirl effect. That's the idea behind this technique. And if I only use one color, it's not nearly as interesting as if you add another to let it swirl. And sort of marble a little bit, in my opinion. You can see it dries back quite a bit lighter than it looks when it's wet. It's starting to dry back. I want to pump up that color just a little bit. Get some colored water there. I want to keep a white edge between there, so it's a very small puddle. Start with the orange. Essentially, you're leaving a halo around every shape. Over here, I'm going to just make this stem more apparent color. It looks like I did not put this stem in. I'm going to do that now. That's this stem back in here. And okay, and then this one. Maybe I'll do this one. Start with the red color. Really puddle it up. This one's a little more in the background. So I'll start with red water and puddle in some orange. Trying really hard to stay on the surface of the water and leaving a white edge. Okay, and this is the really light one, so I'll leave these two fairly light, just puddling with orange water. And then I'm going to use my yellow because it's a higher value color and puddle that in first for these up here. And maybe I'll use my red instead of my orange to make it slightly different color than these over here on this side. I'm going to leave a white edge between all my shapes. And I might have to clean that up some. Could use a smaller brush if you have one. Alright, so these are background flowers here. So I want to make them not quite as bright as the yellow-orange ones. And I want to leave a white dry path so I can get up on the tip to get a finer line. More on the tip. Get the brush handle vertical. Brace your hand if you have to. Puddle that water up. Here I need to clean up my waxed edge a bit too, but I want to leave a white line between all my shapes so I get more of a stained glass or mosaic look. So these, I don't want it to be as bright, so maybe I'll do this is my background flowers. I still want to make it be within my color family, so maybe I'll puddle in some high value red too. Hardly any color, just duller. I don't want it to be as intense as the yellow ones. So a little bit of yellow swirled into there, but more dominantly orange and red. Okay, and then for this last, this is a bud, so I want it to be light like the yellow one, so I'm going to paint it the same color. As my yellow ones. Oops, created a path there. Oopsie, doopsie. So I'm going to do this one. This is a bud or a dead one or the other. I'm going to paint that one the same as those lighter value ones. Then I have this guy who's in the background. So I'm going to puddle that one. Make this one more orange. Just to separate it from this other guy. Here I'm going to collect a little bit of this water, just as it's fallen down in a trough there. This guy is a background one, so I'm going to make it more orange and red. And I'll have to clean up my wax edges a little bit. I think you're right. I think masking fluid for our lines would be a lot more effective than wax. But we did have limitations when we were in the classroom on time. We'll use our red and our orange for this one. Little background guy. It's kind of connected. Lost my white edge. I can get it back though. We know ways. We have our ways. And these is swirl in the orange and swirl in some red. And then I have this over here, which I'm going to leave Gotta engage the corners or the edges of my painting, but I don't want it to be as bright as my main flowers. And that's gonna be red right there. In fact, why don't I paint that without puddling? I'm just gonna do like that. At this point, I'm going to get my blow dryer out and get it dry so I can move on to see if we need to do anything else. So I want to make sure my blow dryer is on low and stay far away from the painting. I'm just going to show you and then I'll turn the sound off. I do want that to swirl a little bit more into that shape.